What up, y'all? This is Jamba once again. This is on a Sunday afternoon. I usually don't record videos on a Sunday, but here I am. I actually saw this video, and I saw it on my feed and whatever. And I've never seen this channel before. This is called Dad Saves America, 238,000 subscribers. So shout out to him. This guy, I don't know who the hell he is, but his name is Rudyard Lynch. And he's going to explain why 2/3 of young men are single. Now, like I've done videos on the singleness kind of epidemic a little bit. I've done some stuff with Weed Waffles and other content creators because this is a fascinating kind of topic as a single guy myself, and I've dated here and there, and I've struggled with dating, and I've had some success here and there. So I'm kind of really in the thick of this, right? I know a lot of my male friends are single, not all of them. A lot aren't, and a lot of are in good relationships. So this is something that um, I think is timely and has been timely for a while. So he's going to explain why 2/3 of young men are single. Let's see if I agree. Let's see if it's BS. Let's see if he's onto something. Maybe I might learn something. Maybe you might learn something. Who knows?
2/3 of men under 30 are single. And again, people lie about these numbers.
2/3.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't know that stat. 2/3 of men 18 to 30 are single. And I think the numbers are really higher because most people, when they say they're in a relationship, they're in a situationship.
Mm-hmm.
And or maybe not most, but a very large amount. And I don't count situationships as relationships. And I can see the pain in your face.
Well, not to interrupt the train.
Oh, and he's talking to an older fella who doesn't know shit about the whole dating scene. Yeah. When you have these conversations with your parents, like my dad knows because my dad is single, and he talks about how the women that he's seeing at his age are very similar to younger women. So he knows. But a lot of these older men, especially these older white men who've been married since 1998 or 1996 or sometimes whatever, it's like they really have no idea. Like they don't have a fucking clue about what their sons and daughters, really their sons, are kind of going through out here. So it's always interesting to see the reaction. Like, really, 2/3? It's like back in my day when I was 30, I already had 2 kids and a house and a mortgage and and a full-time job at so completely different era. Oh, I muted the thing.
The almost singular piece of advice I've been giving my son since he's graduated high school.
Oh God, you see, what did I just say? The sons, and I bet you the advice that he's going to give his sons is probably either outdated or some bullshit. But I could be wrong.
I don't care about any other part of what you decide to do with your life. Find a woman that shares your values and team up with her.
That's very Italian. My father, growing up, said the only thing.
Find a woman who shares your. Now that's not bad advice, but there's so much more to it that he's not factoring in, that he's never had to factor in, because when he met a woman in 1987, she didn't have IG, she didn't have Tinder, she didn't have Bumble, she didn't have seeking arrangements, she didn't have a whole bunch of the shit that his son has to deal with at 22 years old. So he's not wrong, but it's a little bit more complex than that. It's not just values, it's a whole lot of other shit, my dude.
That matters in life is honor, Rudyard. I don't care if
you decide to do with your life. Find a woman that shares your values and team up with her.
That's very Italian. My
Boomer
father,
advice.
growing up, said the only thing that matters in life is honor, Rudyard. I don't care if Italian. My father, growing up, said the only thing that matters in life is honor, Rudyard. I don't care if you're poor. I don't care if you're a failure. I care that you have honor.
It is very Italian. You're right. It is very it is a very inherited, multi-generational Sicilian, I trust no one but the family.
Yes.
Have the family is everything perspective.
When Uncle Tony from Palermo had all of his money stolen from the mafia, he could support on his wife, and then they moved out to Syria, and then they moved out to Messina, and it was all fine. But he trusted in his wife.
Wait, is this a hypothetical? Or you actually have an Uncle Tony?
No, I made all of this up.
Okay.
I'm just thinking of an Italian chain of logic.
Yes. Okay. But all right, so keep going. So you got this 2/3 of your generation.
I'm named Rudyard William Lynch. Where's the Italian in that name?
Oh, no, it's the Roman Empire, baby. We got around.
Yeah. So
focus.
1/3 of men under 30 are virgins. Again, I assume that's an undercount. And
it is an undercount. A third. So the reason would be an undercount is because you got a lot of these. So let's rewind a little bit.
a third of men under 30 are virgins. Again, I assume
A third of men under 30 are virgins. Yeah, because you can have a man who got a BJ under the bleachers one time for 45 seconds, and he will count that because it's oral. It counts. You know, there's a lot of, so he's right on that. It's, I would say, I'm not going to say it's necessarily half men under 30, but I would probably say it's probably around, if I had to make a guess, like 35, maybe almost 40% or so that are under 30 who are virgins. Maybe.
that's an undercount. And so this is a huge issue. And
So this is the incel revolution, which is one of your
exactly,
videos.
yes. And
He said the I word. I'm saying, man, that I word be catching on, man. That I word, that the I word is, that's the new slur. That's the, not slur, I should say. That's the, it's like another word for loser, basically. But yeah, man, that I word has been catching on, man. Catching on.
so let's say you work all the jobs and then you can't afford to have a family or you can't get laid.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of working the job if there's not the reproductive payoff? So for that's one. Second thing is you can't afford a house to support kids.
Yeah. So if you're a man who's, and he has a point, and this is why I emphasize to men that they should find a purpose, so that you're fulfilled in your purpose, even if you don't get the kids in the house, right? So a lot of the times these men are trying to work a job and are trying to study hard and get paid well or learn a craft or whatever. But it's like, well, what's the point of me working hard if I can't even get a text back, or if I can't even get a match to get the text, to get the date, to get the girlfriend, to get the fiance, the engagement, to get the marriage, to get the, like, if you can't even, because a lot of these men can't even get a text back, a lot of these men can't even get a phone number, a lot of these men can't even get a date. So if you are going months, in a lot of cases with these men, years without without that positive reinforcement, then it is, if you're a man, if you don't have your purpose and you're just working for money, then you're more than likely, I'm not saying that this isn't the case for every man, but you're probably going to lose some ambition if you're not, so he is right. I mean, the act of reproducing, whether it's sex or sex for reproductive purposes to have a kid, is a big incentive for a lot of men. um so, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you remove it, then it's gonna cause some problems.
Because that's through the roof. And keep in mind, young people spend 2/3 of their income on rent.
Building your online business?
Point.
Go to Wix.com.
He hasn't been wrong so far. He said 2/3 of the income on rent. Yeah, it's not necessarily, which is, you probably shouldn't. In an ideal world, right? But let's continue this.
And
I mean, I did that when I got out of school. I worked in Viacom at New York City. I didn't make enough. I was just racking up credit card debt, and 2/3 of my income was the rent. That's exactly what it was.
That's also New York City, though. Like New York City.
No, all of America is New York City. I'd say
exactly, yes. But New York City is a peripheral. Like New York City is a horrible example. That might have been normal when you were in New York City, but now that's the whole country. And it also,
So yeah. Yeah, you chose to go to New York City back in the early 80s and do all that, bro. But that's not the norm, and it really shouldn't be the norm. And what these here's what they're not going to mention. And I'm going to probably talk about it a little bit more. What they're not going to mention is how women, if we're talking about young men, 'cause this is young men, so I don't even fucking qualify in this no more because I'm 30 something years old. But what he's not going to mention is how women who are around their age bracket, not all of them, not really necessarily half of them, but a big chunk of them, the same one to maybe half, are monetizing themselves in some way, shape, or form. And because of them monetizing themselves, whether that's a sugar daddy situation or just kind of social media, whatever that kind of is, they're choosing to not be in relationships with men who haven't found their way yet economically. So that's a huge factor. Huge factor. There's a lot of women. Look, I'll be honest with you. There's some women that I've talked to, who I've had interest in who tell me, yeah, I would see you, but I gotta see my sugar daddy this week or whatever. Like, that's a real thing. It's a real thing. And these are not women that I'm taking quote unquote seriously, but I'm just giving y'all the real.
So rent is money that's not, it's not like economically reproductive. So there's certain,
it's not an investment in
exactly,
an asset.
yes. And so that's a second thing. So
Mhm.
you have mating issue, you have rent issue. That's
What's the heart of the mating issue? Very briefly, because
If he doesn't, okay, he's gonna ask this question. If the younger guy doesn't mention women at all, then more than likely he's not going to be really on the money. Like, you can't talk about the equation, because this is an equation here. You can't talk about one half of the equation without mentioning the other half of the equation. It's not just men are lazy, men are fucking up, men. There's, I'm not just saying it's all women either, but it's both, right? So let's see what he says.
Chris Williamson spends a lot of time on this kind of stuff.
Yes. So the shortest answer I could give is I would say it's heavily an economics issue due to the structure of dating apps, where dating apps, and I'm friends with a lot of like dating content creators. This is something Homath has also said, that dating apps are the
Like when he said whole math.
thing that killed it. Where you look at the chart of male virginity, it jumps from 8% when the iPhone was invented,
And in 2008.
and then it immediately went up to 27% over a 10-year period. And that's due to the introduction of dating apps. And keep in mind, over 60% of relationships today are started online.
Yep.
For Gen Z, I'm going to guess it's higher.
Higher,
And
much higher. Gen Z it's like we're talking like 80% or so.
This is like the harem effect. It's like
exactly.
one high status male
Yes.
attracts all of the attention of the females,
Yep.
and the disparities
Yes.
there leave everybody else
Exactly.
like, oh, what are you, under 6'2"?
Okay, he's getting it. He's getting it. I'm guessing he says he watched Chad Williamson or whatever. I said Chad Williamson. Chris Williamson. He's basically a Chad. I call him Chadinson. So he knows, even though he's a boomer, he knows a little bit more than the average man around his age.
Yes. And I think I blame dating apps the most, because if you were to go back to like 2015, this is a much healthier ecosystem. And there was still feminism, there was still all these other things.
Yeah,
and then the dating apps and the screens. And when people give dating advice, the most common dating advice is go to group events, go to community stuff. But if you look at what the average Zoomer does, the average Zoomer spends 8 hours a day on screens. I think even independent from work. And so what that means is no one's going outside. Yes. And so if no one's going outside, that creates an issue. And
it's not even just that no one goes outside. It's that if you were to go outside, and even if you met a woman outside, that woman is still herself is spending 8 or however many hours on the phone anyway. So even though you're talking to that woman, whether you meet her at a run club or the gym, or the whatever, I don't know what Zoomers do, but even if you meet her out, you're still having to compete against her phone, and not even just the other men on her phone, but just her life and whatever is happening on there. So even if you are a young man who is not who doesn't have a social media presence, it's like that's going to more than likely work against you. The people don't talk about that. People don't talk about how often when you don't have an Instagram, you are in essence, I don't want to say like a social pariah, but it's almost like you don't have like a resume. So you kind of have to have a social media imprint to a certain degree as a young man to kind of navigate. Like it's really unavoidable,
I look at,
it's the problem of, even from a parenting young kids perspective, if you want to send your kids outside, and no one's outside.
I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'm hungry. I'll be right back. Okay, I got my cheddar. No, Ruffles cheddar. I was gonna get some Cheetos, but then I was like, nah, that's greedy, because I always get the Cheetos, and there's other people who live here. And then I was gonna get the Lay's, and I was like, yeah, but I want something cheesy. So I just met it in the middle and got some cheddar and sour cream. Ruffles, this is not sponsored. Okay, here we go.
outside super boring.
Yeah.
And so
where am I?
It's the problem of, even from a parenting young kids perspective, if you want to send your kids outside
Yeah.
and no one's outside's super boring.
Yeah.
And so pretty quickly you're like, well, I put you in the backyard and you're there kicking dust around. And after 30 minutes, I kind of understand you don't want to stay outside because no one's outside.
Outside's a parking lot. And because people say, I mean, it also annoys me, people say, Rudyard, you should touch grass. And like, I've hiked the Appalachian Trail. I've lived in 7 countries. I've traveled around the country. I've done a lot of cool stuff. Going outside is what got me to believe this stuff, because I talked to people outside and they were not satisfied. And outside, I was on the Tom Bilyeu podcast, and I was in West Hollywood, and I thought, I'm going to run a test. I'm going to walk around for an hour. And if there's a homeless guy in this wealthiest, I'm going to sightsee the homeless in West Hollywood, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the world. And there was this homeless guy doing PTSD shakes and screaming, I want to hurt someone. And I thought, there's no reason for this. This neighborhood's very wealthy. You could choose not to have this guy here, but it's a sign that's outside. And
go outside. Oh no, I might have fentanyl needles thrown at me from a crazy person.
Fentanyl's Philly's greatest export recently. It's from Kensington. And so
this conversation is a little, I won't say all over the place, but he just started talking about, hold on. Not sure why the homeless in West Hollywood thing, why that was super relevant. I mean, I kind of get it, but I only got about 3 more minutes. Let's continue.
Situation is a complete catastrophe.
Dating apps would be the second most unequal country in the world today, where it would be behind South Africa and ahead of Venezuela. And it's the worst possible equilibrium, because I know lots of guys in that top 20%, and they don't like it either, where the guys who are doing well on the dating apps, hedonism's overrated, I've consistently found. Like, the guys in that 20%, they mostly don't actually like being there. Past a certain threshold of hedonism, they do actually want to get a girlfriend or get married or that stuff. But the apps don't sort for that kind of person. And so they sleep with these women as a way to get around not actually having a better alternative. And I think society treats men as more...
Look. Maybe this shit wasn't a good idea because I'm choking. Now he can, God, he can say that. Hold on. He's talking about the top 20%. Hold on.
And as a way to get around just a certain threshold of hedonism, hedonism's overrated, I've consistently found. Like, the guys in that 20%, they mostly don't actually like being there. Past a certain threshold of hedonism, they do.
They actually don't like being there. But they would much rather be there than be the guys in the bottom 80%, because at least the thing about it is that these men in the top 20, look, these men in the top 20%, they at least have the option of being in relationships if they want to be, right? Anybody who is getting laid on a regular basis, best believe out of these women he's getting laid by, he can just pick one decent woman or a good woman to be in a relationship with. The fact of the matter is that they just get greedy. Similar to how I get greedy with these chips sometimes. A lot of times when you have the option of getting getting as many chips, or as many, in this case, as many women as you want, you tend to self-indulge. But you have the agency to pick just one chip and stick with that. You do. So cry me a river when it comes to like, oh, they're not having a good time either. It's like, well, because they're heavily indulging so much, it makes it worse for the bottom 80% to get anything if we're just talking about dating apps. So it's a little like he's trying to make it seem as though it's bad for everybody. It's like it's not bad for everybody.
Do actually want to get a girlfriend or get married or that stuff, but the apps don't sort for that kind of person. And so they sleep with these women as a way to get around not actually having a better alternative. And I think society treats men as more cynical.
You don't have to sleep around.
And more.
Wait, what do you say?
Treats men as more cynical and more basically animalistic than men are. I think most men are actually very kind. I think most men have the natural paternal instinct in them.
Well, one of the things to speak to that, when I
agree with that.
When my son was born, and I've talked about this on the show because in some ways it is the animating force. I was working at Spike TV. My wife, Lisa, we got engaged and the pregnancy happened right around that time. And so we were relatively young. Like, I'm under 50. My son is going to be 20. Would have been normal. Now I don't know anybody that's got kids that old at my age. It was so exciting to become a dad.
Yeah.
It has been the thing that has anchored my reality. I don't care about my political opinions. I don't ultimately care whether my work succeeds or fails. All of that's gravy because my family and because of especially my son.
And most men will never get to have that joy that you have, sir. Maybe your son might, because you seem to be a successful dude. I can kind of tell by your aesthetic that you're probably successful. So more than likely your son will be successful to a certain degree. So your son doesn't have to necessarily have to worry about that. But a lot of men are not going to have kids. They're not going to ever have sons. They're never going to be in a waiting room while their wife is in labor with the cigar in his fucking hand. He's never going to play catch with his son when he's 10 years old and teach him how to throw or teach him how to ride a bike or take his daughter to prom. Like a lot of men, I'm not going to say most, but a lot of men, I don't know if I'm going to be that guy. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I hope I have kids. I hope that happens, but fuck, at this point, I don't really know. So, there's gonna be a whole lot of grandparentless older people walking around like, well, I wish I had a grandbaby, but social media happens. So,
but the narrative, it's like there was a revolution for men that just didn't get acknowledged. Like my wife and I, and this is true of all of my peers.
Yeah.
We aren't like 1950s men. Like we were changing the diapers and getting up and wearing the backpack on the front thing that Baby Bjorn or whatever the hell that thing was called.
Yeah.
We were doing all that stuff. And yet the public cultural narrative is still like bumbling Al Bundy that doesn't carry his weight.
Yeah.
And
no, that's not necessarily the public image. Well, because that Al Bundy shit, that was like early 90s, like late 80s, early 90s. Like, people don't really watch The Simpsons. People like this whole narrative of like, yeah, the bumbling dad. People don't watch fucking sitcoms no more. So we have to kind of start to change the narrative on this whole dad thing. I don't even think there is a public zeitgeist on what a dad is. I think we could have said that in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s or even late 2000s, or 2010s maybe, but not now. Now it's a little bit different. Just like now, I don't think there really is a public zeitgeist on what a father is.
And like I did this whole ad campaign at Spike TV called True Dads, and it was like, hey, one of the ads was like, we know you, super mom, the work, the kids, but what about you, dad? Where's your super title?
Yes.
And it's like we just literally never got one. It was like do better, guys. Do better. It's like
I do agree with the whole do better thing. I mean that was kind of some bullshit, but that got a lot of backlash. Like Gillette did that one commercial. I don't know if y'all saw that shit. That got a lot of backlash.
Who are you talking to?
That's a good point because it brings up the point I was going to make. There's no incentive to cooperate inside the system. So you're talking about why someone would show up to work and not do a good job. And I can completely understand that because that was me in school. And if I had a job, I don't think I'd work hard at a job if I had a normal job now. I would be completely disaffected. And I work hard in my current job because I have a sense of investment in it. And also,
I have no idea what this guy does. I might look him up. In my off time, maybe.
It's my work. I'm responsible for it. I can do it how I want. I have agency. If you don't give men agency, men aren't going to work.
If you like this,
interesting. Yeah, I actually mostly, probably really all together agree with what the younger guy was talking about, and I'm glad that the older guy seemed to know what was kind of happening. Like he seems to be in the know. Maybe it's because he does stuff like this. So that was a little bit refreshing, because I thought that he was going to be on some boomer type, like, all you got to do is just be yourself type of shit, or all you got to do is just have a sturdy job, and that's what I did back in 1982. Like, I thought that was going to be, the sentiment. But yeah, I got to head out, you guys. I'm actually a little bit late, but that's all good. Gonna be back with more content, so stay tuned and like and subscribe.